Iranian media says Tehran has postponed full reopening of its airspace until Saturday afternoon, while eastern airspace reopened earlier this week. Northern, southern and western regions will remain closed until Saturday afternoon. Republican-led U.S. Senate rejects a Democratic-led bid to block President Donald Trump from using further military force against Iran, hours after the president said that he would consider more bombing. Donald Trump lashes out at Iran's supreme leader for ingratitude, saying he saved him from assassination. Iran's foreign minister says Trump should stop disrespectful tone against Khamenei if he wants a deal.
It's a terrible situation that's going Gaza. He's asking about, and we think within the next week we're going to get a ceasefire.
Donald Trump voices optimism about a new ceasefire in Gaza as criticism grows over mounting civilian deaths at Israeli-backed food distribution centers in the territory. President Vladimir Putin credits U.S. President Donald Trump, says relations between Russia and the U.S. are stabilizing. In a major escalation, President Trump abruptly ends trade talks with Canada over its new digital tax on U.S. tech firms. Vowing new tariffs within a week, the move rattles markets, reignites trade tensions as the administration eyes global deals ahead of Labor Day. Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo sign a peace agreement in Washington to end fighting that killed thousands, with the two countries pledging to pull back support for guerrillas. Over 600 devotees fell ill during Rath Yatra in Puri in India as sweltering heat, humidity and overcrowding triggers a series of isolated health emergencies and minor injuries. Alexandra Ayala becomes the first player from the Philippines to reach a WTA final. The 20-year-old will have the chance to create more history in the Eastbourne Open final on Saturday. All right, U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he would absolutely consider bombing Iran again if intelligence indicated that Iran was still able to enrich uranium to nuclear weapons grade. Asked in a White House press conference whether he would consider fresh airstrikes if last week's strikes were not successful in ending Iran's nuclear ambitions, Trump replied without question, absolutely.
If the intelligence reports conclude that Iran can enrich uranium to a level that concerns you, would you consider bombing the country again?
Without question, absolutely.
Trump also insisted that Iran wants to return to negotiations on its nuclear program a week after U.S. strikes on Iran's 3 nuclear facilities, including Fordo. However, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has denied any agreement for resumption of talks with the United States.
So Iran wants to meet. As you know, their sites were obliterated. They're very evil nuclear sites. They were, now has been proven. We had some fake news for a little while.
Later, in a post on Truth Social, Trump said that he had saved the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei from a very ugly death. In the post, Trump claimed that the U.S. forces knew exactly where Khamenei was but did not let Israel or U.S. forces kill him. He further added that he'd immediately dropped work on sanctions relief for Iran after Khamenei said his country had scored a victory over the United States. Trump's comments received a sharp rebuke from Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. In a post on X, Araghchi condemned Trump's statements as disrespectful and unacceptable and said that if Trump genuinely wants a deal, he should set aside his tone towards the Iranian supreme leader. Meanwhile, a week after Trump claimed that U.S. strikes had obliterated Fordo, new satellite images have emerged which show the impact of the U.S. strikes. However, the extent of the damage still remains unclear. Iran also rejected a request by UN nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, to visit its nuclear facilities bombed by the United States and Israel. In a post on X, Foreign Minister Araghchi called the IAEA's request meaningless and malign in intent. Araghchi hit out at the chief Rafael Grossi personally for not speaking out against the Israeli and US strikes, describing it as an astounding betrayal of his duties. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of Houthi supporters celebrated what they called as Iran's victory over Israel and described it as a gain for the Palestinian cause.
This great victory achieved by Iran over the Israeli adversary is a triumph for the entire nation and, above all, a gain for the Palestinian cause.
The war is over, the guns have fallen silent, Israel and Iran both claim victory. Both nations are now counting the costs, assessing the damage and preparing for the next round. Israel is a powerful nation with an advanced military, but there's no doubt that the 12-day Iran-Israel war has reshaped power equilibriums. Iran has emerged as the new global missile superpower. Let's take a look.
In a dramatic escalation that has rattled military planners from Tel Aviv to Washington, Iran has unveiled and unleashed its so-called monster missile. A weapon that not only dwarfs its predecessors in sheer destructive power, but also signals Tehran's arrival as a true missile superpower. The Khorramshahr 4, Iran's latest and largest ballistic missile, roared into headlines after being fired in a barrage targeting Israel moments after US airstrikes on Iranian nuclear sites. With a declared range of 2,000 kilometers and a staggering 1,500 kilogram warhead, this missile is built for impact and intimidation. But what truly sets it apart is its advanced payload. A dispersing warhead system capable of raining dozens of submunitions over a vast area, saturating targets and overwhelming even the most sophisticated missile defenses. This missile reportedly released a deadly shower of bomblets that pounded military and infrastructure targets across a 6-kilometer radius in Haifa and Tel Aviv, including the Ben Gurion Airport and critical command centers. The monster missile operates at blistering speeds, reaching up to Mach 8 within the atmosphere, and can be launched from mobile platforms, making it a nightmare to track and intercept. With this weapon, Iran has not only shattered the illusion of Israeli invulnerability, but has also redrawn the balance of power in the region. As the dust settles, one thing is clear. The monster missile has made Iran a force to be reckoned with in the world's missile order. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Now, US President Donald Trump has voiced optimism about a new ceasefire deal in Gaza, saying an agreement involving Israel and Hamas could come as early as next week. Trump said that he spoke with some of the individuals involved in attempts to secure a ceasefire and hostage release deal without further elaborating. Trump also highlighted the recent US decision to donate $30 million to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation.
I think it's close. I just spoke with some of the people involved. It's a terrible situation that's going Gaza he's asking about. And we think within the next week we're going to get a ceasefire. And we're supplying, as you know, a lot of money and a lot of food to that area because we have to, I mean, you have to.
Now, Trump's remarks come as Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer, a top aide to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, is due to visit Washington next week for talks on Gaza. The situation in Gaza remains grim, with Palestinian civil defense declaring the death of 30 people who were killed in 6 separate strikes in northern Gaza on Friday. At least 8 people were killed in the strike on the Osama bin Zayed school itself, which now serves as a shelter. Fire was seen raging inside the classroom of the school after the strike in northern Gaza's Jabalia. Meanwhile, Israeli military said that it intercepted a rocket launch from central Gaza, adding that no sirens sounded in towns, but an alert was activated in open areas near the border and no injuries were caused. On the other hand, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres slammed the US-Israel joint aid operation in Gaza, saying that desperate Gazans were being pushed to militarized zones for aid. Guterres' statement was backed by UN Agency for Refugees, UNRWA, which said that the new aid distribution system had become a killing field. The agency, in a scathing post on social media, said that new aid operation was bringing dehumanization, chaos and death instead of an orderly food distribution.
Israel, as the occupying power, is required by international law to agree to and to facilitate humanitarian relief. Meanwhile, humanitarian operations continue to be strangled. For over 3 months, shelter materials and fuel for critical services have been blocked. Doctors are forced to choose who gets the last vial of medicine or the last ventilator. Aid workers themselves are starving. This cannot be normalized. A handful of medical supplies finally crossed into Gaza earlier this week, the first from the UN in months. But this only underscores the vast scale of the crisis.
Refuting the statement by the UN chief, Israeli Foreign Ministry accused the United Nations of aligning itself with Hamas. The ministry claimed that Gaza Humanitarian Foundation had provided more than 46 million meals to Palestinian civilians. Yet the UN was doing everything it can to oppose this effort. Furthermore, IDF rejected the report, alleging that its soldiers were ordered to fire at unarmed Palestinians while waiting for humanitarian aid in Gaza. The report was published by Israeli newspaper Haaretz, claimed that orders to open fire at the crowd came directly from their commanders. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz have also rejected the reports of vicious lies designed to discredit the IDF. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is facing flak for baiting Palestinians for food aid after it came into existence last month. A major legal victory for the Trump administration after the U.S. Supreme Court limits powers to lower courts, putting a pause on Trump's orders on birthright citizenship. The top court has ordered lower court judges to reconsider the scope of their orders, blocking Trump's executive order to restrict birthright citizenship. The top court justices granted a request by the Trump administration to narrow the scope of 3 nationwide injunctions which were issued by federal judges in Maryland, Massachusetts and Washington state. The injunction put a halt to policy enforcement while it was being litigated in court. Trump's administration has for months struggled to implement the president's policy changes due to orders from court to halt enforcement of Trump's executive orders. Trump called the verdict a giant win and accused judges in lower courts of abusing their power to override presidential policies.
Such happiness and spirit. Sometimes you don't see that, but this case is very important. I was elected on a historic mandate, but in recent months we've seen a handful of radical left judges effectively try to overrule the rightful powers of the president to stop the American people from getting the policies that they voted for in record numbers. It was a grave threat to democracy.
The Supreme Court issued a 6-3 ruling led by conservative Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who wrote in her opinion statement, I'm quoting here, "No one disputes that the executive has a duty to follow the law, but the judiciary does not have unbridled authority to enforce this obligation. In fact, sometimes the law prohibits the judiciary from doing so." For more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report. Listen to this.
The United States Supreme Court limited the power of the federal courts to issue nationwide injunctions stating that lower courts can only block government policies for specific parties involved. This is a strategic victory for President Trump's executive agenda. It strips key legal tools that routinely stopped his policies from taking effect nationwide. For instance, it weakens the nationwide blocks against his executive order on birthright citizenship. In response, President Trump called the decision a quote-unquote monumental victory, saying that it protects his mandate from quote activist judges and clears the way for more of his policies. Critics, including the court's liberal judges, now worry that it will restrict judicial checks on executive power and could lead to uneven application across different states, particularly regarding something as fundamental as birthright citizenship. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
Now, trade tensions are flaring again. On Friday, President Donald Trump dropped a bombshell calling off all U.S. trade talks with Canada. His reason? A new 3% digital services tax set to be imposed by Canada on major American tech firms, including Amazon, Google, Meta and Apple. Now, the tax targets revenue earned from Canadian users and applies to companies earning more than $20 million annually in Canada. Not only that, it's retroactive to 2022, calling the tax a blatant attack. Trump announced that he is immediately terminating all trade discussions with Canada, warning that a new tariff rate on Canadian goods will be announced within the next 7 days. This decision, of course, a big deal for Canada. It's the United States' second largest trading partner after Mexico. In 2024, Canada bought $349.4 billion worth of U.S. goods and sold $412.7 billion in return. The stakes are high for businesses on both sides of the border, from steel to software, autos to agriculture. Any tariff hike could raise prices on consumer goods and strain supply chains already under pressure. Despite Trump calling off trade talks, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said negotiations continue.
No, look, we'll continue to conduct these complex negotiations in the best interests of Canadians. It's a negotiation.
Just hours before Trump's announcement, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent painted a very different picture, telling reporters that trade talks with countries like China, India and the EU were progressing well and deals could be finalized by Labor Day. Meanwhile, tensions with China are slowly easing. The US and China agreed to resume shipments of critical rare earth minerals and magnets essential for manufacturing everything from smartphones to missiles. But it's not just geopolitics affecting your wallet. Back home, consumer spending is slowing and economic data is raising expectations of a Federal Reserve rate cut. All while global trade uncertainty makes financial markets more volatile. So what does this mean for everyday Americans? Higher tariffs could mean higher prices on Canadian imports like lumber, aluminum, cars and tech products. Weaker consumer spending could signal an economic slowdown, and rate cuts might lower borrowing costs but could weaken the US dollar and impact global buying power. Now, the most prestigious tennis Grand Slam is almost upon us. Wimbledon 2025 gets underway on Monday. The two-time defending champion Carlos Alcaraz will begin his campaign against 38-year-old Fabio Fognini. Now, the 22-year-old Spaniard is riding on an 18-match winning streak, the longest of his career, and could meet 8th-seed Holger Rune in the quarterfinals. The Spaniard could face 3rd-seed Alexander Zverev in the semis, 7-time champion Novak Djokovic, and Alcaraz could only meet in the final for the 3rd consecutive year. Djokovic, competing at his lowest seeding of 6th since 2018, will start against Frenchman Alexander Muller. He is seeded for a quarterfinal meeting with British #1 Jack Draper. 7-time champion Novak Djokovic is set to face Jannik Sinner in the last 4 clash. The Italian will be eyeing his maiden Wimbledon title. Let's also take a look at the women's draw. World number 1 Aryna Sabalenka could face Madison Keys in the quarterfinals in what could be a rematch of the Australian Open final, where Keys triumphed. Sabalenka could meet either Jasmine Paolini or Qinwen Zheng in the semi-finals. A potential slowdown for the title could see Sabalenka take on reigning French Open champion Coco Gauff in a rematch of the Roland Garros final. Gauff, who has yet to progress past the 4th round at the grass court major, will open her campaign against Diana Yastremska. She could face 5-time Grand Slam champion Iga Swiatek in the quarterfinal. Now for Scarlett Johansson, Jonathan Bailey and Mahershala Ali, joining the iconic Jurassic World franchise in Jurassic World Rebirth was more than just another role. It was a dream come true. In an exclusive conversation with WION Samarpita Das, the actors share their journey of becoming part of a dinosaur-sized legacy. We're going to leave you with this one. Thank you so much for joining us on WION World is One.
On the island we're headed to, 24 species have survived there alone.
Leaving only the worst ones here. I actually had a general meeting with Stephen. I had never had a general meeting with him before. And in my mind, I was thinking, well, he's been prepped, he knows that I'm a huge Jurassic fan, and so the conversation will kind of lead towards that, but I don't want to come in like hot, I want to like let it have its organic moment. And so we talked for like a couple of hours actually, because we had a lot to talk about, a lot in common, and like just interested in one another. And I was thinking, if I leave this meeting and we don't talk about Jurassic, then I'm just going to jump in the Hudson River and that'll be it. It'll carry me away. No, but then eventually after the 2 hours, he was like, wait, aren't we supposed to be talking about Jurassic? And I saw that as my window to completely fangirl out, which was good because I'd already established myself as a semi-normal person up until that point. And so the fact that I could sort of let loose and, really be fanatical about it, I felt the timing was right. And it worked in my favor.
In all of our favors, because you are brilliant.
Thank you. It's good to share your enthusiasm, it turns out.
What's more challenging? They're just different, they're different. It's hard to compare. I want to do great work, and with every opportunity I'm given, I want to do the absolute best work I can do. And so I don't necessarily, when I look at my past roles, I don't look at what is harder than any other part. I just want to do great work and really come to life.
And I think, both those, dramatic roles and roles that are more action-based, you're still, they all require a level of physicality, and they also both require, emotional stamina too. So I don't know that I agree with Mahershala, I don't know that it's necessarily like one is harder than the other. They're both, if you're doing your job right, then, you probably wake up the next day after your work the evening before and you're still thinking about the work that you did and, what, if you got everything and, what you're preparing for the day, like you're in it, regardless of what it asks of you.
It's unbelievable. I'm trying to think of a franchise that's as long-standing and has such a massive following. I think for so many people, everyone has a relationship with the Jurassic franchise, and everyone remembers seeing it the first time. And to be able to step into the world is a phenomenal experience and opportunity.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
We're giving an AI-generated video where we can analyze your credit history, your credit score.
It's all about now content. A lot of it is now digital. A lot of TV content is still being watched.
I think it's been a fantastic journey. We have succeeded in some of our original goals, which was to bring credit accessibility to both companies and individuals.
Key milestones of traction under your leadership.
Getting actually a personal check from Mr. Ratan Tata. We got an opportunity to get listed.
One of the biggest things that has changed in Razorpay over the last 5-6 years I've been is to be a single product, single business company to a multi-product, multi-business company.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
YO1 Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to YO1 Health Resort. Make your reservation at yo1.com.
Well, I really loved how sharp the questions were. I think in very short span of time, I almost shared whatever I learned in so many years. So I think this is a platform where you can get really condensed learning in a very short span of time.
This week on Wings, we tell you about the Mansarovar pilgrimage with a ground report from Tibet. We cover pride from India and around the world. Also, a Columbus flagship replica that has sailed into London has opened for curious visitors. Only on WION, World is One.
Very warm welcome. You're watching Beyond World is One. My name is Diksha Bisla. Let's start this bulletin by quickly taking a look at the headlines. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to embark on a 5-nation tour beginning July 2nd to attend BRICS Summit in Brazil and engage with key partners to step up the bilateral cooperation.